Again, some of you already know this, but there were problems not just maybe at your homes or apartments last night, but at the school as well. I did not have an internet connection from 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock this morning. From 7 o'clock until I just did it right now, I did not have the only connection I had was to get in through guest. All right, and I didn't realize if you log in through guest, you can't use the printer. All right, so I just did log in. So what we're going to go over today, I'm going to try to give you hard copies. It's not small. It's 14 pages. You've got most of it already in what I just sent you. All right, to show you what this looks like when we get done. All right. Okay, this is for a fictional, and that should be changed to 79, but that's fine. So you come into this place, you get an oil change, you get a radiator flush, a transmission flush, an inspection, a muffler replacement. You're just going wild here. You get a tire rotation. You've got $250 worth of parts, and you've got $10 or 10 hours worth of labor. All right. So, fortunately, it's so big that it won't let me show the buttons very well. Come on, click. Oh, I think this is your copy. And you're going to get a final bill that'll print out right here. All right. So let me see if this is the old copy or the newer copy. In fact, let's do this. All right. Right now, it doesn't look very pretty. I didn't have a lot of time to format it, but it works, it's functional, and it does work. All right. What you have, if you run your program now, none of this stuff works because we're going to add the guts to it, so to speak, right now. All right. And when I get done, there's a few other things that I'll mention to you. So right now, there's a button here for calculate, a button here for clear, and a button here for calculate, clear, and exit like we've had before. Notice there's also menu options. All right, as of right now, none of the menu options work. Maybe I'm nuts, but I literally wrote this morning. All right, and like I said, with the comments and all the other stuff, it's 500 lines. You've got about 350 of those 500 lines. All right, so we're going to go and write the guts, so to speak, of the program today. But what I want to show you first is when we look at this, all right, I want to go over some of the stuff at least rather that's in here. Guess I didn't realize. This really isn't that big, but it looks that big because of the projection that's up here. It takes what's on my screen and it magnifies it by 1.5 times. All right, so it's really not that big. Like I said, as dumb as it sounds, it just looks that big. So if we, so there it is. So if we look at it, this is what I tried to add and tried to show you. Okay. First of all, I thought this was funny just because I have a very strange sense of humor. I went out to Google Images and I typed in Joe's Automotive just for the hell of it. And of course, it came back with a bunch of Joe's Automotive stuff. All right. And I grabbed the one that was right here, Joe's Foreign Automotive. All right. And it says established 1979. So that's what you see right here. In order to put that there, I used a picture box control. Does that make sense to everyone? Because you are going to have to go and add an image, at least one image, to when you do your test. All right. So to add that, that's one control I guess I didn't change the name of. It's picture box 1, but I went over to the image that was right there, clicked, boom, and I went into the project resource file, and don't worry that there's a couple there, it's no biggie, all right? But I basically grabbed that image from the system, okay? The first one that I grabbed, I didn't like the way it looked on there, so that's why I grabbed this one. That's why there's a Joe's here and a Joe's 1. What I want you to understand, and if you don't, please look in the book and try the exercises that are in the book I want you to be able to create a picture box. I want you to be able to go to the image and add an image to it. And I want you to be able to set the size mode so it looks decent on the screen. Now you may or may not question, but you might say, well, that's fine. Why did you put it way over here? I put it way over here because if I moved it over, it would be blocked when I tried any of the menu options. See what I mean? All right. This is not like an unbelievably fantastic looking app. Okay, but it's functional more than anything else, and that's what I care about. So that was the first thing. I wanted to make sure that you were exposed to using a picture box. Secondly, if you look up on the screen here, you'll notice oil and lube, flushes, miscellaneous, and parts and labor. Those are all group boxes. All right, we talked a little bit about those yesterday. I didn't use any panels, and really I could have probably done something with a panel. I could have like said where it's got your final bill. I could have probably taken all of this stuff that was right here and put it into a panel. All right. The only difference, or the main difference between a panel and a group box, is that a panel doesn't have a heading like the group box does. Okay. So I went and this is literally called group box oil and lube, group box flushes, group box MISC, and group box parts and labor. I tried to come up with names that were indicative of what we were trying to do. Then, in this group box, the first one here, I added 3 radio buttons. 3 meaning that any one of them can be chosen at any one time, but only one. Then I added check boxes for the 2 flushes and check boxes for the 3 miscellaneous operations. So when you run this, when this starts, nothing is checked. But if you do check something, then one of them will remain checked unless you click the clear button. Does that make sense? All right. When you click clear, everything that's here clears, and my totals and everything else clear. But if I choose this one, then my flush total is $50. If I choose this one, my flush total is $80. If I choose them both, it's $130. That should make sense to you. I mean, it's simple math. All right. I'm not going to go through all the permutations and combinations, but there's a lot of them. Parts is just a dollar amount, and I did put a little bit of validation in there. It's not totally validated. Why? Because you're going to do that. All right? Because I didn't check for something being less than 0. Right now, it'll actually take less than 0. Shouldn't do that. So I'm going to have you do that. And for labor, you put in a number. So if I put in 5 there, it's $55 an hour. So 55 times 5 would mean that labor would be $275. All right? So again, if I run this, just to show you what I'm talking about, because I'm not trying to confuse you, but if I run this, what you'll see here, when I go through that, okay, there's 25, plus 50 is 75, plus 80 is 155, plus 25, or I'm sorry, 35 is like 190, and 150 is 340, 380 if I did my math right, 480, so that should be 480 and 550. All right, so about $1,000, 1,030 or something like that. And you'll notice, maybe I did my math wrong, but you can see all of the stuff that's in there. So there's our parts total. Our labor total, again, is 55 times 10. So if we add all this stuff, all these up, unless I made a mistake, it should give you a subtotal of $1,680. The tax rate on this is 8%. So this times 0.08 gives you this. This plus this should give you that. Does that all make sense? All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the code, and I've already got it in here. All right. And I'm hoping that as you add it, you make mistakes, because that's how you're going to learn. But I didn't really like most of the exercises at the end of the chapter. In fact, most of them I thought were really bad. All right. There's one in there that I don't think is too bad. I'm going to look at it tonight, and I might assign that one tomorrow. But your other assignment is to finish this and make it work. Now, I'll have to give you some more specs on this, but I just didn't have time to do it today. So I'm going to stop the run here, and we're going to take a look at the code. So if you have not done so already, All right, if you have not, and I don't need this because I decided not to use that. If you have not done so already, please make sure you've got the program up and on your screen. All right, and go to the code. Okay, the first thing you'll notice, and I'm not going to read this all to you, but hopefully I didn't make any mistakes. I tried to map these things up, so let's see. 25, 20, and 35. Okay, 50, 80, and 35. 150 and 40. Yeah, it looks like I did all those right. All right. So, as it says, Joe's Ford Automotive was founded in '79. It performs the following maintenance on vehicles. This is a takeoff of a program that I had in a book that I used to use. All right. And I thought, well, this won't be hard because I've already got it written in C#. But unfortunately, and you may or may not have heard this, but the external drive that I have that's about this big, I dropped it right before the end of the semester and ruined it. It has like 4 years of my life, and I didn't have it backed up anyplace else. So I basically have lost all that stuff. You know, stupid ass me. But that's what I was. All right. And they even tried, they bought me another one. The school paid $100, bought me another one, and tried to do a disc-to-disc transplant where they took part of the inside of one out and put it in the other one. Still didn't work. So I ended up rewriting this from scratch, which was fine. It never hurts. So those are the costs. Again, Joe performs non-routine services and charges for parts and labor. Labor is $55 an hour. The tax rate on all parts and all work done, including the labor, is 8%. So create a GUI app that resembles the one passed out in class. Well, I didn't pass it out because I couldn't run it off. This application should use as many of the following Chapter 12 text controls as possible. All right. I didn't put in a link label, but I'm going to let you do that. I put in a checkbox. All right. I put in a radio button. I put in a picture box. I put in a list box. There is no combo box. There is no, there is a group box. There is no panel. There is a menu. There is no month calendar. There is no date time picker. All right. And I didn't emphasize form layout. All right. I did not use, and I don't like the checked list box control, so that's not in there. So what you have right now are what are referred to as stubs. In other words, for every one of these, there's about 15 or 16 different routines. And for all those different routines, you've got a comment, the name of the routine, curly brace, curly brace. That's called a stub. They're all void procedures. So you don't have the guts, so to speak. We're going to start putting that in just a minute. But these are the different functions. So we've got one called oil loop charges. And what that does is that calculates which one of these you've chosen. Or if you've chosen none, then then it's none. Then we've got one called flush charges that has the total of these or none. Miss charges the total of these or none. Parts and labor, which does the parts and labor, all right, which again could be 0. So that's the oil loop charges, that's the flush charges, that's the miscellaneous charges, that's the other charges, all right. So we've got a parts and labor. Then I figured out the subtotal. And what's the subtotal? Well, that should make sense to you. It's all of these plus all of these plus all of these plus what's ever in here. That's the subtotal. Again, then we take that subtotal, multiply it by 0.08, that gives us our taxable total. When we add together our subtotal and our taxable total, that gives us our final total. So this is not unlike things you've already done. That said, most of the things like this you've already done, you probably have done using a console app. That doesn't fly for chapters 11 through 14. All right? My hope is this is going to give us stuff from chapter 12. All right? I don't know if I can tweak it to make it give me stuff from chapter 13 or not, but I'm going to try. All right? The other thing that we're going to add for chapter 14 is there'll be another button down at the bottom here that'll say, for lack of better words, it'll say print bill. And it won't send it to the printer, but it'll send it to a file. So you'll have the entire thing out there that you'll send to a file. All right, we'll do that when we get to chapter 14. You say, I don't know how to do that because we haven't talked about it yet. That'll be after the break. All right. All right. Then there's a bunch of clear routines. Clear oil lube should be pretty obvious. It'll clear those 3 radio buttons. Clear flushes, which will clear both those check boxes. When I say clear, I mean none of them will be highlighted. There won't be a check in it, or it won't have the dot in it, so to speak. Clear the miscellaneous things. Clear the other, which will clear the text boxes for parts and labor. And clear my totals. Totals are what are going to appear in here, in the list box. All right. Required input validation. Right now it says do not accept negative or non-numeric entries. Right now, I didn't even try it yet, but I put in code for non-numeric. I'm going to let you put in the code for the negative. It's not hard, all right? But we'll even talk about it in just a bit. All right, so scrolling our way down, there are some comments in here. If I was doing this where I was creating the app and somebody else, you or somebody else was going to use it, I might have even put in more comments than I did, all right? But you can see what's in here. So let's see, 25, 20, 35, and 50. 25, 20, 35, and 50, that's good. 80, 35, 150. And if that one's 40, good. They're all correct. All right. I didn't put comments here, but ideally you understand that $25 is the cost for an oil change. $20 is the cost for a chassis lube, etc. Does that all make sense? I mean, I could have added more comments here. I just didn't. All right, and I tried to make it so these weren't real long. So instead of a transmission flush, I said tranny flush, etc. But ideally, you can read any of these constants that are right here, and they're written in such a way that they make sense to you. All right, and if they have, then I've done my job as far as that goes. All right, so those are your program constants. Then I created a bunch of variables. All right, and these variables are, as you can see here, the labor cost, which is basically going to labor and parts costs, which is what goes in here for parts. What goes in here multiplied by 55, that's the labor. All right, the subtotal, I already told you how we figured that out. We add up everything. Then we take the subtotal, multiply it by 0.08. That's our tax total. We add the subtotal and the taxable total. That gives us our final total. Again, ideally at least, that all makes sense to you. All right? And I got it working right before class started, but the problem was, even though it worked, it didn't have headings in front of it. So all it had was just a bunch of dollar totals. So it made it really hard to figure out what went with what, what the charge was, etc. So I added this stuff. So where you see like oil change, chassis lube, oil lube combo, all that stuff right there, that is the stuff that when you run the program, I'll just check off a few of these here. All right. So those are the things that say oil change, transmission charge, Okay, does that make sense? All right. Now that I look at it, probably just to be consistent, I said charge for all of these. So instead of change, I should have probably said charge. But it's no biggie one way or the other. All right, so I had variables for those. Okay, did I have to do that? Of course I didn't, but I did. All right, what I'm trying to show you in here, and I believe you, am I right? You have all this stuff, correct? All right, is, for lack of better words, the calculate button is acting like a main. It's a driver. When you click the calculate button, it is calling these other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different routines. And each one of those routines is going through the different stages that you have, and it's figuring out, okay, your oil lube charges, then it's figuring out your flush charges, then your miscellaneous charges, which is the muffler replacement and the other stuff, then the other charges, I don't remember what that was, parts charges, then labor charges, then your subtotal, then your tax, then your total, then your display bill. All right? Now, as it is right now, the program can blow up. All right? We'll go over that in just a minute. But again, what I want you to understand is what's going on there. So my guess is if you go down here, in here to yours, I think all you have in here is just the curly brace. Is that correct? All right. So position your cursor over there. And before we do this, let's talk about what's going to happen. All right. There are 4 possible things that can happen inside of here. Either I can check nothing, or I can check the oil change one, or I can check the chassis lube one, or I can check the oil and lube. Does that make sense? So there's 4 possibilities. The 3 options that are there and nothing. Now, if it's nothing, technically there's nothing you have to do. But if this one is checked, you want to add $25 to your subtotal. If this one is checked, you want to add $20 to your subtotal. And if this one is checked, you want to add $35 to your subtotal. That all make sense? All right. And we already have variables that will do that. Oil change, chassis lube, or oil lube combo. All right. So this is the routine, and I can fit just about all of it in here. In fact, I think that is it. And I'd like you to start putting that in, please. And I'm sorry, if you're that slow a typist, you're going to have to type faster. Because I'm going to go until 10 o'clock today. Whatever we don't finish, we're going to finish tomorrow. And you don't have to add comments because ideally, at least, looking at that code, it makes sense. If the oil change button is checked, add oil change cost. Otherwise, if, et cetera, et cetera. That one probably isn't even necessary, but that just means if none are checked. But so I just put it in there, just so you knew what was happening. Now we got started a little late, so I'm probably going to go till around 9 or 9:05, and then you'll take your break. Again, take advantage of IntelliSense. If you start to type something in and the IntelliSense finds it, then just double click on it in the IntelliSense, especially those of you who are not fast typists. You have to learn to start doing things to augment and help yourself when you're working on this. Anybody have any idea why did I say plus equals on there? Why didn't I say equals? Yeah, I did on this one. It would have worked with just the equals, okay? Because it's if else. But when we do the other ones, they're going to be ifs. All right, and especially with the other ones, you have no idea in the order in which they're going to check things. Okay, so it'll make it easier writing it like this. So again, add 25, add 20, add 35, add nothing. That should make sense to everybody in here. All right? Now, especially for those of you who are not fast typists, I'd recommend doing this. Grab this whole thing that's in here, everything between the curlies, copy it to the clipboard. If you say, I don't want it, then don't do it. But it's going to make, because the other routines we write aren't going to be that different than this one. All right, so if you paste them in, it'll make it go that much faster. Is there anything in this code right here, in this routine, that you don't understand? Because you will be asked to do something similar to this when you do your final hands-on test, all right, which again will be somewhere around the, I don't know, approximately the 4th of April. Okay. There will be one problem. It will encompass stuff from Chapter 11, Chapter 12, chapter 13 and chapter 14. But it's not going to be this one, but it's not going to be that different than this. All right? Okay, so that's the first routine. Now, for the next one, notice, again, yours is empty. And it says here, this method calculates the total charges for radiator flush and or transmission flush. Now, you can either type this in, or if you copy the stuff to the clipboard, you can paste it, and you're going to have to change radio button, whatever you had in there, you have to make changes, but it'll be faster for you. This one would not work correctly if we put an else in there. Did you hear that? If we did put an else in there, this one wouldn't work correctly, because that's assuming that one of them is going to be checked or the other. It's not necessarily the case. Remember, 0, 1, or 2 can be checked here. Again, when you get done with this one, I'd suggest you copy all that's in here, because the next one is very similar to this one. All right, so that, again, that flush charges, that's handling. So we've already handled this one. That was our oil lube. We just handled this one. That's our flush charges. This one, our miscellaneous, is almost the same as this one. That's why I told you to copy it, but you have to change the names and add one more if. So this next one is right here. That's the miscellaneous charges. Yes. Probably not. So again, these must be if statements. You couldn't have an else in there. All right? Because again, it's possible that you've chosen none, 1, 2, or all 3. Any questions on any of these we've done? So you now should be able to handle these, and you should be able to handle these, and you should be able to handle these. That's what we've done so far. All right, the next one, very small, it's just this. That's just going to add the parts and the labor to the subtotal. And you're right, we could have done that in our parts and labor routines too. That would have been just fine. All right, and I'll go down to the try statement in just a second. Do you have a question? Yeah.
And the other one, if you were to add a statement for if none were checked, could you do else if?
No, because Um, remember, if you did else ifs, that's assuming that either one or that one or that one or none. But you have to account for or for combinations. So with an else if, that wouldn't work right there. You could have said, you could have checked first and said if none of them are checked, then just get out. You could have done that. All right. All right, so the next thing to do, so we've now handled this and this and this, but now it's possible when you come in here, the person left it blank or put something that was non-numeric in. Okay? It's also possible they put something that's less than 0, but I didn't account for that. You're going to put that in. But right now, this gave me the chance to put some stuff in here with a try catch. Now, don't worry about keying it in yet. Please just listen up for a second. What are we doing here? That's what's more important to me. All right, so we're saying try. All right, so we're grabbing whatever we put into that text box and we're throwing it into temp. Then we're saying if you cannot parse it, throw a new format exception. And what that should do is it should print out a message box that says error, and it should reset that to 0. So that should handle you leaving it blank or you putting something in there that's not a number. All right? If I get down to this point, then I know that I can take parts cost and I can set it equal to, and actually do the conversion. All right? Is this the best way of doing it? No, I tried to code this in what I thought would be the most straightforward way for you to do it as possible. So put in that try if you would, please. Put everything in there in the try, and then I'll arrow down and let you see the catch. Here's a hint for you. The next routine, labor charges, is identical to this one, except where you have parts, you're going to put labor. That's why you should really go in there and copy this routine when you get done, and then paste it in. Now, if you say, no, I'm a glutton for punishment, and I really, really, really love to type, then go do that. All right? I was being monitored yesterday when Shannon was in here because she already wrote up a report on me. It was not bad, but I think she said something that I should have. Not, I shouldn't. I should have you guys come up here once in a while and kind of be teachers. What's that? Well, the funny thing is, remember when she came in last semester? That's when we were doing that. That we were working on that covered wagon thing, that Western thing, bootstrap thing, and we were watching a tape. And how many times have we watched tapes in here? Not very often. She wrote down, this wasn't a real interactive class. Yeah, because we were watching a tape. Well, you know, and she comes in when she has the time, and I understand that. I wasn't mad or anything, but I just told her, hey, this is like the second time we've ever watched a tape in here. Notice I'm taking charge right here. I'm saying if you can't parse it, throw the exception. I'm telling it to throw it. And I'm also handling it the way I want to handle it down here in the catch. Put that up a little higher. So hopefully you at least put the try in there because that's the rest of it. And I even put a finally in. So again, this should catch if I put in something non-numeric. It should bring up a message box that says error, setting parts to 0. And then I printed out the message from the system, and the title should be part cost format error. It should have just an OK button, and it should have an exclamation in there. So let's try it. Let's put in something non-numeric here. All right. And then click calculate. Notice what comes up. Error setting parts to 0. One of the unidentified, I guess I should have had that should have been on a new line, but you get the idea. One of the unidentified items was invalid. There's my heading, and it's an exclamation with just an OK button. And notice that was reset to 0. Now I get the same thing because there was nothing in labor. I left that one blank. So the same message. And notice again, see how it set it to 0? And now I get totals. That's what I want to have happen. Because even if the user screws up, the program will still work. The problem as it lies right now, though, is what if I do this? I'm just going to check everything. All right. Now your parts cost, I'm going to put in here negative 500. And for labor, I'm going to put in negative 10. Okay, and I'm going to click calculate. Now, according to this, I owe you $1,857.60. All right, because right now the program accepts negative numbers. It shouldn't. So what you're going to do is you're going to check, and if it's less than 0, you're going to throw your own exception that you're going to write that's going to basically give an error message like we saw and just set it to 0. All right, and how to do that is all in the book. All right, if you look up on the screen here, this is the try, right? Let's assume everything succeeds. So you put a valid number in there. You with me? So I put in 100. What that should do then is my parts cost should now be 100. All right, that's what I want. If it fails, I've reset my parts cost to 0. But do you agree that whether the try succeeds and that line hits, or the try fails and that line hits, would you agree that I've now set parts cost? Whether it worked or it didn't work, I set parts cost. So in the finally block, which I put in here, I just tell you to put that into the text box and add that parts cost to the subtotal. It'll either be adding 0 to it or some number. Right now, it'll also add a negative number, but you're going to fix that. I'll let you key that in. Again, please look up on the screen here. I would recommend that when you get done, you take everything that's in there, from the try all the way down to the finally, all that, and then just copy it right in here, and we'll make some changes to it when we get back from the break. After you've got that in, again, we'll start up again at 9:15. So even if you're a slower typist, that should still give you time to type that in and get a break in. Yes.
So when you're doing your, when you keep running it, the subtotal is like way over what what it should be combined. Is it adding
Because if you're not clicking the clear button, right now that's not put in there. When you go to click calculate, really the first thing you should be doing is just calling the clear routine, or not the clear routine, but you should be clearing out all of your totals that are in there. So what I'm saying is this. I don't know if this is what you mean, but let's say I do this. So I come in here and I'll just randomly select some stuff here. And I'll put in 100 here, and I'll put in 100 here, and I'll put in a 10 right here. All right. Now I'll go and click calculate. Boom. If I click calculate again, Okay, says air, etc. Yeah, yeah, all that stuff. But it's still going on. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, my question is that, all right, so your subtotal, you can just scroll up on that bottom text box, in the final bill. You scroll up, um, the subtotal is way more than it should be. What I think's happening is
No, why is it way more than it should be? Let's see. It does look like it is. Yeah,
I think what's happening is when that other charges is there, you're adding it twice.
that could be. That very well could be.
That's why I was asking if we actually
Gotcha.
use that. So,
Well, what it should be doing, okay, is where I'm either get rid of that one or where I'm doing it in the other routines, get it out of there. Comment one of them out.
yeah, that would work. Either that or if you put it in the catch maybe instead of the finally. Because, yeah, you want it to add to it, but it's already adding to it up there.
Yeah, it's doing it here.
So
I think we should just
get rid of all
comment
that.
this whole routine out.
'Cause I mean,
So let's see if we do that, what it looks like.
I think it's because you have other
Yeah.
charges down below as well.
So let's see. So right now I'm calling other charges, and that's why I would be getting the errors. So.
Yeah.
So 25, 75, 115, 150, 250, and 250 and 550. If I did that right now, that should be $800, I would think. It's still too big.
Why is that making that so much higher?
It's got to be adding it more than once. Well, it should be 800, and it's 650 more than it should be. All right, and what's 650? Well, that's these two. So these two are being added twice. It's down in the subtotal charges.
Oh, that would explain it.
All right, let's try one more time. 35, 85, 120, 220. Let's put 220 and 55 would be 275. There's the subtotal. There it is, 275. So now it's correct.
Didn't you just technically get rid of the other charges then? And all those things?
This can be removed. Yeah, that other charge is here, can be removed, and here that can be removed, and this whole routine subtotal charges can be removed because it's already being done. And actually, you can leave them in there if you just comment out the calls to them.
Oh, okay.
That'll work just fine. So just comment out the line that says other charges, and comment out the line that says subtotal charges. I mean, technically, a good programmer should remove those anyway because you're not using them. But I'm just saying that they're technically they're not hurting anything to stay in there.